Concordia Prime floated in the dark like a city carved from moonlight. Towers rose from its spine. Rings of docks turned slow circles around its core. From a distance, the station looked peaceful, like a silver flower opening in space. Up close, it was busy and loud, a hive full of voices, engines, and light. Jax Rourke stood under one of the grand windows of the council hall with a tool pack on his hip and grease on his sleeve. He was 34, a former combat engineer from the Pacific Defense War, now a station mechanic. He liked machines because machines made sense if you listened. People were harder. He checked the sensor trim hidden in the window frame and counted under his breath. 1, 2, 3. Counting calmed him. The numbers were the same in any language on any world. Beside him drifted Luma, a Vexian translator who looked like a floating bell of crystal jelly. Vexians had no mouths. They spoke by pulsing light through their bodies. A small collar on Luma's mantle turned those pulses into sound. "You are nervous," Luma chimed gently. Blue ripples moved through her glassy skin. "Everyone's nervous," Jax said. "Big day." It was the last hour of the 3-day summit. Humanity was about to join the Galactic Council. Jax had no seat in the chamber. He was there because the station chief wanted one more human tech in the room, quietly making sure nothing breaks. Jax took that seriously. He checked what people ignored: air returns, fire seals, weak seams in the glass. Far below the window, the main floor glowed with color. The Catharians, 8-limbed, tall, and blue, stood like living statues near the aisle. The Altarians, proud and four-armed, wore mirror-bright armor. The tiny Zahirians sat in robes that hid their faces. There were the Dramori with scaled cheeks and slit pupils, the soft-furred Besair monks in gray hoods, and a dozen others Jax had learned to name only recently. Concordia Prime hummed with translators and heartbeats. The door behind the podium opened. President Elena Vasquez stepped out into light. Jax had seen her once in Santiago when he was a soldier with dirt on his boots and grief in his ribs. She had shaken his hand and looked him in the eye like he was a person, not a case file. On the broadcast, she always seemed calm. In person, she looked tired, yes, but also kind. Kind like a steady hand in a storm. She stood at the podium. A translator disc at her throat caught her voice and sent it into the many ways the galaxy listened. "Friends," she said. The words spread in echoes, in tones, in lights, in scents puffed into alien air. Somewhere in the upper tiers, a Catharian child clicked in delight. "2 years ago," Elena said, "we came to you with a violent past and a hopeful future. You had reason to fear us. You also chose to trust us. Today we sign not just a treaty but a promise, that we will use our strength to build, not break, that we will stand with you, not over you." Her voice was warm and clear. Jax watched her hands. They did not tremble. On the glass beside him, Jax's maintenance display pinged. He glanced down. A tiny drop in air pressure, a blip, nothing more. The station breathed, it flexed and sighed. But the blip was in the aisle near the Zahirian delegation. Jax frowned. He checked the weather seals. He checked the floor vents. The numbers went back to green. Luma's light turned a thoughtful violet. "Problem." "Probably nothing," Jax said. But his stomach felt tight, the way it did on missions gone bad long before anyone said the word ambush. Down below, Elena lifted the treaty, thin, bright, and heavy with work. "Our children deserve a galaxy where differences are celebrated, not feared, where problems are solved with words, not." Movement. A figure in Zahirian robes stood in the crowd. The robe twitched like it had a life of its own. The figure's hands came up from the sleeves. Jax's throat went dry. He'd seen that motion before, in dust and smoke, the quick, practiced lift of a trained wrist. "Security," Jax whispered into his comm. "Tier 4 aisle row 7, possible weapon draw." His comm stayed quiet. In the hall, it was considered rude to talk during the signing. Security used tight beam channels tonight. He wasn't on them. He was just a contractor. The robed figure rushed the aisle. The weapon in its hands hissed and bloomed into a blade of blue light. Not plasma, older, meaner. An energy filament surrounded by a stabilized field. It cut by unraveling whatever it touched. Jax ran before he decided to run. His tool pack thumped his hip. Luma flashed a warning white and darted after him, faster than he expected, her body skimming over the rail. Elena did not move. She faced the charge with her chin high and her eyes steady, as if she knew she was watching history and wanted to hold its gaze. The assassin slammed the blade into her chest. There was a sound like glass asterisk-ing, short, sharp, wrong. Alina's breath left in a soft grunt. Blood spread across her jacket in a slow, dark flower. The chamber went silent, the way a battlefield goes silent inside your head when your friend falls. "Humanity is a disease," the assassin said. The station mics carried the words to every ear. "Cut it out before it spreads." Jax reached the edge of the main floor as security finally moved. He vaulted the rail, landed hard, and stumbled, legs shaking. Luma dipped low and steadied him with a cool push of her body like a firm hand. Colonel Marcus Chen, Alina's security chief, arrived in a sprint, pistol already up. His face was carved from stone, one shot. The assassin jerked, stumbled, and vanished in a bright twist of light. Teleport, illegal on station. Smuggled past by a friend. Alina crumpled. Chen caught her and lowered her to the floor. Blood bubbled at her lips. She pulled the mic close with one shaky hand. "Remember," she whispered. It came out of every speaker, every translator. It climbed up the spines of every person who could hear. "Remember what we came here to build." The words hung there, then her eyes lost their light. All the sound that had been holding its breath exploded, screams, clicking prayers, gasping sobs, angry shouts, the deep drum of Catharian mourning that shook the bones. Lights flashed. Guards formed rings. Robes rustled like frightened birds. Jack stood there like a man in a flood who has forgotten how to swim. Luma's lights dimmed to a bruise blue. "Jax," she whispered through the collar, "we must move, more danger will follow the first cut." Jax nodded, but his feet felt nailed to the floor. He forced his legs to work. As he moved, a small flicker under the podium caught his eye. No, not a flicker. A glow. The careful, steady blink of a device that wanted to be ignored. He slid to his knees at the dais edge. "Cover me," he muttered. Luma flared a hard, bright white that made nearby delegates shield their sensing eyes. Jax reached under the lip of the podium and found a wafer no bigger than a credit chip stuck to the steel. It hummed against his skin. The stamp on its surface was simple, 3 narrow triangles nested like blades. He had seen that mark on field reports, hegemony. The faction on a dozen worlds that preached purity and conquest, the ones who hated humans most. He pulled the wafer free and dropped it into a lead-lined pouch from his kit. The glow died. He exhaled. The breath shook. Jax Luma pulsed, behind. A Zahirian in a robe lunged from the press of bodies and swung a knife for Jax's neck. Not a light blade, solid metal serrated. A backup tool for close work. Jax twisted. The blade sliced his cheek, heat and salt. He slammed his tool pack into the Zahirian's wrist and felt bones give. The knife clattered. Jax grabbed the assassin's robe, yanked him forward, and drove a knee up into soft ribs. Zahirians were light and fast but hollow-boned. The figure wheezed and went down. A human security officer seized the Zahirian and dragged him away. Another officer took Jax by the shoulder with more force than needed. "Get up top, contractor," the officer shouted. "This is a hot zone." "Then check the podium," Jax snapped, pointing with a bloody finger. "These bastards leave gifts. I just pulled one." The officer blinked, surprised that a grease-sleeved tech was giving orders in an ocean of admirals. Then the man nodded, barked to his team, and moved. Colonel Chen looked up from Alina. His eyes landed on Jax for a fraction of a second, cold, sharp, measuring, then away again to the ring of guards, the exits, the chaos. Sirens rolled through the station, the doors sealed. From the ceiling, soft barriers fell to guide crowds into safe lanes. Concordia Prime had seen riots before. It had never seen this. Luma hovered close. "You are bleeding." "It can wait." "It cannot," she said, almost scolding. A bead of cool gel from her medport touched his cut and hissed. The sting faded. "I didn't know Vexians carried medports." "We do not. I am unusual." Her light flickered with embarrassment. "Jax, I am afraid." He swallowed. "Me too." They stood as the hall emptied into ordered lines. Besair monks rocked in prayer. A Catharian mother wrapped her legs around her child and made a low, steady song to keep panic away. Altarian guards stood in a square, faces like mirrors, eyes like knives. On the main floor, a sheet covered Alina's body. News drones hovered in the upper tiers. Jax imagined Earth watching. He imagined bars and homes and ship messes gone still, the sound of a spoon tapping a cup, the soft O of someone who had hoped too hard for too long. A new sound entered the hall, not from the speakers, not from the crowd, from the bones of the station. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Lockdown bolts, the kind they only used for war or breach. Luma's light turned gray. "Jax, your device," she said, pointing at his wrist. He looked, his comm bracelet showed a single line of text. "Black sky." Jax's mouth went dry. Black sky was a code he had learned in a trench. It meant go dark, it meant pull back to human lines, it meant we are done talking. His comm blinked again. Civilian CHANNLS closed, INT RSBEC border SEALED, allies hold. He lifted his head. Through the high window, past his own reflection and the drifting drone lights, he saw the distant curve of the station's outer ring. Human ships were unmooring, not in panic, in perfect order. Tugs released. Lights went out. Shapes slid into the black like predators slipping beneath still water. Luma followed his gaze and made a small, sad chime. "Where are you going, Jax?" He could not answer. The words would not come. He had fought for Earth. He had buried friends. He had fixed machines to stop them breaking. He had dared to believe this day meant something new. On the floor below, Colonel Chen stood. His face was pale, his voice was iron. "Lock Concordia Prime," he said. "Nobody in, nobody out." Jax looked at the sheet on the floor. He looked at the ships drifting toward the dark. He thought of the wafer in his pouch and the mark of 3 blades. The translator discs still hung in the air, waiting for someone to speak hope into them again. No one did. The lights flickered once, twice, as if the station itself had felt a chill. Somewhere far away, something heavy docked with a hollow boom, a sound he felt in his feet. Then every human signal on Concordia Prime blinked off at once. The galaxy, just for a beat, went silent. And that was when the window above Jax reflected something that was not in the room. A row of black shapes outside the station, motionless and watching, like eyes in the dark. The galaxy had seen conquest before. Empires had risen and fallen. Armies had marched, fleets had burned skis red, but no one had ever seen this. Not a single shot fired. Not a single building destroyed. 3 heavily defended worlds, Zirian, Malphas, Crix Prime, emptied in a single night. Scout ships floated over silent streets. They found markets still stocked, transports still fueled, bread still warm on tables. Only the people were gone. Soldiers, leaders, civilians vanished. And in each capital square a steel plaque, simple, crude, human steel. The words burned into its face in galactic standard. For ELENA. In the council chamber, panic thickened like smoke. "This is annihilation," roared General Voss, her 8 legs clattering against the marble floor. "A war crime beyond measure." "They killed no one," argued Admiral Keth, voice hoarse. "They removed, they relocated, the cities stand, the ships stand, even the food remains. This is not extermination, this is," he faltered, searching for the word, "punishment." The crystalline Vexian delegate flickered violently, shards of color strobing across its translucent body. "What power empties a world? What engine carries millions without trace? No drive in this galaxy can do this." The Dramori, reptilian and scarred from centuries of battle, hissed through jagged teeth. "If humans wield such a weapon, then they are more dangerous than we feared." And in the center of it all, Sarah Chen sat at the human table, her black dress unadorned, her face calm, her eyes unreadable. She let the storm of voices rise and burn itself out before she stood, datapad in hand. "You demand answers," she said. Her voice was soft, but every microphone carried it clear. "You want to know how we did it? Very well." She tapped the pad. A holographic schematic bloomed above the table. Alien eyes widened. "This is a quantum displacement field generator," Sarah explained. "Based on Zahirian teleportation technology, improved by human engineers, it moves matter across light years without leaving a trace." General Voss barked laughter, bitter and sharp. "Impossible, such a field would drain a star." "Only if you use conventional power," Sarah replied coolly. She swiped again. A small metal disc appeared in hologram, no bigger than a dinner plate. "This is a zero-point energy extractor. It draws power from the quantum vacuum. One device can power a city for a century. With it, entire populations can be displaced without effort." "You lie," snapped the Dramori delegate. "Such advances take millennia." Sarah's gaze sharpened, her tone cutting. "You assume progress follows your path. You assume peace builds faster than war. But our history is 10,000 years of conflict. War is our forge. It drives innovation beyond reason. Every weapon, every defense, every cruel trick tested, improved, refined. You had millions of years to sing. We had only blood. The chamber went silent. Sarah's eyes swept across the alien faces, cold as winter. Do you understand now? You murdered the one woman who believed in peace, the one voice that begged us to be gentle. And so 3 worlds have been relocated, 3 plaques have been left, and still, no one has died. That is what we call mercy. On Concordia Prime, Jax Rourke watched from the back of the chamber. He had been allowed to stay as a technical consultant, though he knew the council really kept him as a living question. What would a lone human say about all this? He felt his stomach knot. He'd fought wars, he'd seen cities burn, but this, moving millions like chess pieces, this chilled him deeper than blood. Beside him, Luma dimmed to a deep gray blue, her body pulsing in slow sorrow. Your people frighten me, she whispered. They frighten me too, Jax muttered. The council demanded explanations, demanded justice, demanded to know where the missing had gone. Sarah Chen gave them nothing. They are alive, they are safe. They have food, air, shelter, more than they deserve after murdering our diplomat. That is all you need to know. You cannot simply vanish worlds, cried the Vexian. You cannot assassinate diplomats, Sarah replied. Yet here we are. Outside the chamber, alien ships scanned deep space, searching for traces of human fleets. They found nothing. Their sensors swept and probed, but where humans passed there was silence, as if the void itself refused to speak. Whispers spread among the delegates, ghost fleets, black ships, human weapons that could make entire star systems disappear. In markets and ports across the galaxy, merchants whispered to one another. If this is their mercy, what will their wrath look like? That night in his quarters, Jax turned the little hegemony wafer over in his hand. He knew the council hadn't seen it yet. He hadn't told them. Something in his gut said wait. Luma hovered nearby, faint light washing his wall. You are keeping secrets. Yeah. Why? Because if the council knows what I know, Jax said, voice heavy, then the galaxy will burn faster than it already will. 3 weeks later, it happened again. 3 more hegemony worlds went silent. 6 in total. Almost 20 million people, soldiers, officials, families, gone. In each city square a plaque. For ELENA. And the galaxy trembled. The council convened another emergency session. This time, the delegates entered with fear written across their faces. Enough, Admiral Keth said, his calm finally broken. If humanity can do this, then they control a power none of us can resist. What if they use it on us? Whispered the Vexian. What if they already have? Asked General Voss bitterly. The Dramori hissed, scales darkening. This is war. If they will not explain, we must prepare. Then Sarah Chen rose once more, datapad in hand, and the chamber fell silent. You ask what comes next, she said. That depends on you. Deliver the ones responsible for President Vasquez's murder. Deliver the hegemony leaders who plotted it. Or... Her eyes hardened. Or we continue, until the galaxy understands why our history is written in blood. In the gallery, Jax felt his chest tighten. Luma flickered pale, her body trembling like a harp string. What will they do, Jax? She whispered. Jax had no answer, because for the first time he realized, even he didn't know what humanity would stop at. The hegemony fractured like glass under a hammer. When Zirion, Malphas, and Crix Prime vanished, the galaxy reeled. When Vega 7, Titan's Rest, and New Zirion followed, panic began. Now every hegemony leader, every officer, every family tied to the regime scrambled to escape. Admirals shed their uniforms and became grain merchants. Generals shaved their crests and boarded medical transports as patients. Ministers bribed captains for passage on freighters bound for neutral ports. They thought blending in with civilians would hide them. But wherever they fled, humans were already there. A passenger liner called Peaceful Journey drifted through the Nexus sector, carrying thousands of civilians. Hidden among them was Admiral Krenov, once commander of the hegemony's Third Fleet. He had shaved his whiskers, dyed his scales, and claimed to be a spice trader. The ship's captain was on the bridge when his comm crackled. Unidentified vessels detected. He blinked, the screens showed empty space. What vessels? 5 of them, sir, the navigator whispered. Close range. The captain stared. His scanners showed nothing. But then on the viewport, black shapes slid into existence. No running lights, no markings, just shadows darker than space. "They are requesting permission to board," the comm officer said. Her voice shook. "They say they are human." The captain swallowed. "Are they hostile?" The officer listened, then turned pale. "They said they will wait as long as necessary." In the mining belts of Zhurk, a ship called Asteroid Dream carried ore and a secret. Commander Vale, one of the architects of the assassination, hid in engineering dressed as a miner. He had 16 loyal soldiers disguised as crew. When the humans came, their shuttle latched onto the airlock with a quiet thud. 3 figures stepped aboard, one young woman, one old man, and one giant who had to duck to pass through the door. "Good morning," the young woman said, her voice polite. "I am Lieutenant Chen of the Human Space Forces. We are looking for an individual named Commander Vale." The captain stammered. "This is a civilian vessel. We carry no military personnel." The lieutenant smiled kindly. "Of course, may we inspect just to be certain?" Vale watched from hiding, his heart pounding. He signaled his soldiers. Weapons rose. He drew his pistol and stepped out, snarling. "You'll find nothing here but corpses." He fired. The pistol clicked, dead. The old man raised a humming device. "Quantum disruptor," he explained mildly. "No energy weapons will function within 50 meters." Vale roared and pulled a knife. Before he could move, the giant crossed the room in a blur. One moment Vale held the blade, the next his wrist was twisted, his knife gone, his face pressed to the floor. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen said patiently, "we really don't want to hurt you. Please don't make this harder." 20 minutes later, Vale was strapped in a restraint field aboard the human shuttle. His soldiers stood on the observation deck, alive but disarmed, watching their commander vanish into the dark. Across the galaxy, similar scenes unfolded. On a luxury yacht near the Altarian border, human operatives politely asked the staff to step aside before collecting their disguised guest. On a refugee ship, they entered without weapons, knelt before frightened families, and removed only one passenger, an old Zahirian who screamed curses until the airlock closed. On a fortress moon disguised as a monastery, every monk was left unscathed except the one who was no monk at all. The galaxy whispered a new name for them: ghosts. Because they appeared from nothing, struck without blood and vanished again. In the council chamber, delegates raged. "You cannot abduct people from neutral vessels," General Voss thundered. "You cannot assassinate presidents," Sarah Chen replied calmly. The Vexian delegate flickered bright red. "Explain your technology. The charter requires military transparency." Sarah lifted her eyes. The charter was written by those who had never met humans. Perhaps it requires updating. On Concordia Prime, Jax Rurk worked in the shadows. He fixed conduits, patched seals, cleaned up after panicked engineers. And he watched the feeds, the grainy images of black ships appearing from void, the frightened reports of they waited until we opened the doors. He sat on his bunk one night, head in his hands. "This isn't war," he muttered. "This is a hunt." Luma hovered beside him, her glow faint. "Does it matter what word you give it? Your people are unstoppable." "That's what scares me." She pulsed gray. "Me too." At last, only one hegemony leader remained free: Supreme Admiral Korath, mastermind of the assassination itself. He barricaded himself in a fortress carved into the mountains of Zephyr Prime, the hegemony homeworld. The fortress bristled with weapons, powered by its own star core, stocked with food and soldiers enough to last decades. He broadcast his defiance across the galaxy. "Humans will never take me alive. Let them try. Let them learn that the hegemony cannot be broken." But that night, Korath woke not in his fortress, but in a white room with no windows, no doors. On the table beside him lay a note. "Good morning, Supreme Admiral. Breakfast will be served shortly. Please dress appropriately for your trial." The chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so full. Word had spread across 1,000 worlds. The humans were putting the hegemony leaders on trial. The same hall where Elena Vasquez had fallen was now ringed with guards, its tiers overflowing with delegates, journalists, and silent onlookers. In the center, 47 shimmering restraint fields glowed like glass cages. Inside each hovered a figure, Admirals, generals, ministers, operatives, faces once powerful, now pale with fear or twisted in defiance. At the center sat Supreme Admiral Korath, his pale Zahirian features hard as stone. He glared at the human delegation table as though his eyes could cut through it. On the opposite side, Sarah Chen stood at the prosecutor's podium. She wore the same simple black dress she had worn at Alina's funeral. Her hair was tied back tight, her face calm, her eyes unyielding. Behind her, Marcus Chen rose in full dress uniform. His medals caught the light. His voice carried across the chamber, translated into every tongue. This tribunal convenes to judge those responsible for the assassination of President Alina Vasquez, representative of humanity to the Galactic Council. Charges include conspiracy to commit murder, violation of diplomatic sanctuary, and crimes against galactic peace. He turned toward Korath. "How do you plead?" The Zahirian rose within his field, chains shimmering across his wrists. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I plead guilty, and I regret nothing. Humanity is a disease, a virus. I would kill your diplomat again and again if given the chance." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Marcus Chen's face did not change, so noted. One by one, the other leaders were called. Some remained silent, eyes on the floor, some spat defiance. A few begged for mercy, but none denied the evidence. Because Sarah Chen had it all. She stood and began her case. Holograms bloomed in the air, intercepted communications, financial transfers, secret meetings, videos of hegemony officials discussing the human problem and a final solution. Maps of fleets prepared to burn Earth and its colonies. Evidence too overwhelming, too damning to refute. For 3 hours she spoke, methodical and relentless. When she finished, the chamber sat in horrified silence. Finally, Marcus Chen stood. "The evidence is clear. The defendants are guilty on all counts. The question now is punishment." Korath lifted his chin. "Death, give me death, human. I demand it. I will not live as your prisoner." Chen's answer was cold iron. "Request denied." Korath's jaw dropped. "You cannot deny me an honorable death." "You lost the right to call yourself a warrior when you murdered a diplomat," Chen said. "Warriors fight soldiers. You struck down a woman who carried only words. You will not escape consequence through death." He gestured, and a holographic star map appeared above the chamber. A single system glowed red at the galaxy's edge. "This will be your home, a dying world orbiting a fatting star. No ships, no weapons, no technology. You will have supplies enough for 1 year. After that, survive or perish as you will." The chamber erupted. "Exile, that is cruelty," the Vexian delegate pulsed. "Better mercy than they gave," Sarah replied coldly. Some of the prisoners shouted defiance. Others cried out in fear. Korath spat on the floor. "I choose death. I will not rot on some forgotten rock." 14 others joined him. They were led away. Reports later said they received a single injection that put them to sleep forever, more gentle than they had given Alina. The remaining 32, faces drawn and broken, accepted exile. But the trial was not finished. Sarah raised her datapad again. The assassination was not only the work of the hegemony, they had help. Holograms lit the chamber once more. Evidence of weapons sold by the Dramori, bribes accepted by the Vexian Collective, safe houses offered by the Outer Rim Trading Alliance, 12 species complicit, directly or indirectly, in Alina's death. The chamber froze. The accused delegates shouted denials, excuses, protests. Marcus Chen's voice cut through them. "Effective immediately, these species are barred from human territory, their embassies closed, their trade canceled. Any vessel under their flags will be turned away. This embargo will stand until reparations are made." "You cannot embargo half the galaxy," the Dramori delegate roared. "You should have thought of that," Chen said coldly, "before you murdered our president." The chamber descended into chaos. And then, the doors burst open. A young human officer rushed in, breathless, and whispered in Chen's ear. His face hardened even further. He turned to the chamber, his voice steady. "Nexus Station has been seized. Hegemony remnants hold 3 million civilians hostage. They demand the release of these prisoners." The chamber exploded in noise. Delegates shouted. Civilians gasped. Journalists scrambled for feeds. Chen raised his hand. The room went silent. Transmit, he ordered. A hollow filled the air. Nexus Station, the galaxy's largest trade hub, drifting in orbit. Inside, desperate civilians were crammed into docking bays, guarded by soldiers with explosives strapped to their vests. A voice crackled over the comm. Release our leaders or 3 million innocents die. Marcus Chen looked at his daughter. Sarah handed him a datapad. He read it once, nodded, and lifted his head. Your ultimatum is rejected, he said. You will watch them burn, the voice shrieked. Chen's eyes were cold as stone. You have 10 minutes to surrender. The feed cut. The council chamber held its breath. 10 minutes passed, nothing happened. Then Nexus Station's lights flickered. When they came back on, every hostage was free. Every soldier was gone. Every explosive disarmed and stacked neatly in the cargo bay. On top of the pile, a single plaque. The galaxy stared in silence. The galaxy no longer whispered. It shouted, argued, panicked. Markets collapsed. Trade convoys halted mid-route. Armies mobilized without orders. Every comm channel buzzed with one question. What will the humans do next? Because if humanity could walk into Nexus Station, the largest hub in known space, remove thousands of soldiers, free millions of hostages, disarm bombs, and leave only a plaque, then nowhere was safe. In the council chamber, Marcus Chen made humanity's position clear. The Dramori Republic, the Vexian Collective, the Outer Rim Trading Alliance, and 9 others, he said, his voice iron. You aided the assassins with weapons, with bribes, with silence. You are guilty. The accused delegates shouted protests, but Chen's face did not move. Effective immediately, all embassies closed, all trade suspended, all ships flying your flags barred from human space. Until reparations are made, until true remorse is shown, humanity owes you nothing. This is madness, the Dramori delegate hissed, scales flashing black. You cannot embargo half the galaxy. You should have considered that, Chen said, before you murdered our president. The words rang like a hammer strike. The embargo hit like a tidal wave. On frontier markets, ships with Vexian markings were turned away by automated platforms. On rim colonies, merchants who once sold human alloys found their customers gone. Dramori ports, once fat with human goods, sat empty. It wasn't just economics, it was fear. Alien civilians whispered in streets and plazas. The humans have gone dark. They took worlds without firing a shot. They can appear anywhere. Even species not named in Chen's list began closing their borders to hegemony refugees, terrified of being seen as complicit. On Concordia Prime, Jax Rourke walked the dim corridors, tool pack on his hip, his cheek scar still raw. He passed alien workers huddled in corners, their voices hushed. Every conversation circled the same theme, humanity. Luma floated beside him, her glow pale and tight. They fear you now, she said softly. Jax shook his head. Not me, us. No, Luma pulsed, her colors rippling like grief. They fear all of you. They do not know which human carries the ghosts inside. Jax didn't answer. He thought of the wafer still hidden in his pouch, stamped with the hegemony's mark. He hadn't told the council. Some part of him feared what they'd do if they saw it. Another part feared what humanity would do once it no longer needed excuses. 2 weeks later, Nexus Station's feeds went silent again. Not from sabotage, from whispers. A hegemony remnant fleet had seized it back, 3 million civilians once more under their guns. This time, they broadcast their demands to every corner of the galaxy. Release our leaders, or we destroy Nexus Station. In the council chamber, panic erupted. Delegates shouted, begged, cursed. Marcus Chen stood unmoving. Transmit. The feed flickered. The hegemony commander's face filled the chamber. His voice dripped venom. 3 million lives for 47, decide. Chen's eyes were cold steel. Your ultimatum is rejected. You have 10 minutes. The chamber boiled over. General Voss shouted that he was insane. Admiral Keth begged him to wait. The Vexian pulsed frantic light. 10 minutes passed. On the feed, the hostages trembled, guarded by snarling soldiers with explosives wired across their chests. Then the lights flickered, and once more silence. When the feed cleared, the hostages stood free. The soldiers were gone. The bombs lay stacked in a neat pile, and on top, 4 ELENA. That night, alien leaders met in secret. Their words were full of dread. If they can reach into Nexus Station twice, if they can erase entire worlds, if they can enforce embargo without fleets, then what power do we truly have? None had answers. Jack sat in his quarters staring at his hands. He had bled, sweated, fought, and lost in Earth's wars. He had believed Elena Vasquez when she said humanity could be better. But now, watching what his people were doing, he wasn't sure if she had been right. "Luma," he said quietly, "do you think they'll stop?" The Vexian drifted closer, her glow dim and uncertain. Does hunger stop when the first meal is eaten, or when the last? In New Geneva, Marcus Chen stood before the assembly. The embargo stands, the council trembles, but still, they have not delivered Elena's killers. If they will not, then we will take them. The chamber erupted in applause. Sarah Chen watched from the shadows, her face unreadable. The galaxy had imagined war. They had not imagined nightfall. It began on a Tuesday, with no warning. In a hidden command center beneath the Swiss mountains, Marcus Chen stood before a wall of displays. Red dots marked hegemony fugitives scattered across dozens of systems. Mining freighters, refugee liners, merchant barges, some disguised as pilgrims, others as smugglers. 47 names, 47 guilty hearts. Colonel Hayes, his intelligence chief, reported quietly, "We've confirmed their positions, all of them. They think they're invisible." Chen's eyes narrowed. Begin Operation Nightfall. Across the stars, yellow blips winked into being. Human ships, cloaked and unseen until now. On the passenger liner Peaceful Journey, Admiral Krenoff shouted when black shadows appeared outside his viewport. They sent no threats, only a polite hail. "Please prepare for inspection." When he refused, they repeated the request, again and again, patient as death. Then they boarded. He vanished. On the mining ship Asteroid Dream, Commander Vale cursed as his weapons failed, his knife torn from his grip, his body pinned by a giant human's hands. He vanished. On Nexus Station itself, General Thax was dragged from a crowd of traitors by smiling operatives who whispered apologies to the civilians as they passed. He vanished. One by one, the fugitives disappeared. No blood, no wreckage, just restraint, fields, and silence. Within 72 hours, 46 of the 47 had been taken. The last, Supreme Admiral Korath, had sealed himself inside his fortress on Zephyr Prime, carved into mountains, shielded by energy walls supplied for decades. He declared he would never fall. That night he woke in a white room with no doors. A note on the table read, "Good morning, Supreme Admiral. Breakfast will be served shortly. Please dress appropriately for your trial." The tribunal convened on Concordia Prime, in the very hall where Elena Vasquez had fallen. The gallery was packed. Journalists, delegates, soldiers, civilians, everyone wanted to see what justice looked like in human hands. 47 restraint fields glowed. Inside them, the hegemony leaders shifted, some defiant, some broken. Korath stared at Marcus Chen with eyes full of venom. Marcus, standing tall in his uniform, opened the proceedings. "You are guilty, by your own words, by your own deeds, by the blood you spilled on this floor. The only question is punishment." Korath snarled, "Death, give us death, we demand it." Chen's reply was cold. "No, death is escape. You will live with the weight of what you've done." The hologram above the chamber shifted, showing a single world orbiting a dying star. Harsh mountains, thin air, little water. "This will be your exile. One world, one chance. Survive if you can. No weapons, no ships, no communication. You will have each other. That is all." The chamber shook with outrage. Some delegates cried cruelty, others whispered admiration. The hegemony leaders howled. 14 chose death rather than exile. They were led away, never to return. The rest remained, faces pale with fear. Sarah Chen rose. "Elena Vasquez believed in peace. We honor her by sparing your lives. But you will build no fleets, lead no armies, spill no more blood. If you survive, it will be through cooperation, not conquest." Her words rang like steel across the chamber. But the tribunal was not finished. Sarah lifted her datapad again. The assassination required allies, funding, shelter, silence. We present evidence of complicity, 12 species who aided the hegemony. Gasps filled the hall. Holograms showed payments, safe houses, weapons deals. The truth was laid bare. Chen's judgment was swift. Your embassies are expelled, your ships barred, your trade ended. You will learn what isolation means. When you are ready to repent, perhaps the gates will open again. The chamber trembled with fury, fear, disbelief. And then the alarm sounded. A message blared across the council. Hegemony remnants had seized Nexus Station again, this time with 3 million civilians as shields. The council erupted in horror. The hegemony broadcast filled the chamber. Release our leaders or millions die. Chen's face was stone. Transmit. He stared into the feed, his voice even. Your ultimatum is rejected. You have 10 minutes. Shouts filled the chamber. Delegates begged him to stop, to negotiate. The 10 minutes passed. The lights flickered. When they returned, every hostage was free, every soldier gone, every bomb disarmed and stacked in the cargo bay, on top of the pile as always. For ELENA. Silence gripped the council. For the first time in memory, every alien understood. Humanity did not bluff. Humanity did not yield. Humanity did not forgive. Marcus Chen's voice cut the silence. The hegemony threat is ended. Justice has been served. From this day forward, humanity will take its place in the galaxy, but not as beggars at your table, not as a junior partner. We will keep peace because you now understand the cost of breaking it. If you want war, you will face us. If you want peace, you will find no better ally. He gestured to his daughter. Ambassador Chen will speak for humanity now. I suggest you listen. Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying like a blade through still water. You killed our last diplomat, she said. The one who begged us to be gentle, to forgive, to believe in the dream of peace. She paused, her eyes swept across the chamber, hard and unflinching. And now you will learn why our history is written in blood. The chamber sat frozen, 1,000 species holding their breath. And in the darkness beyond Concordia Prime, unseen but felt, the human fleet waited, silent, patient, unstoppable.